compared to the first transitivity for the structure of the clause stated in the perfect tense, the second transitivity relates to the definition of the transitive verb greet. The definition of the transitive verb greet indicates the action to mediate the subject-object relationship. So the second transitivity is revealed with the transition of the action indicated by the past participle greeted to the listeners as the object. To understand the first transitivity and the second transitivity, we can understand the subject of the clause turns around the orientation from the relationship with the period to the relationship with the listeners in a clause when the past participle originates from a transitive verb. There is a clause, I had greeted you. With the form of the intransitive verb had, the speaker as the subject reveals the intention of the speaker to declare the completion of the experience at the close point in the past, which lasts for a period from the far point in the past to the close point in the past. The form of the intransitive verb had reveals that there is a time gap between the present when the speaker delivers this clause to the listeners in the conversation and the close point in the past when the speaker declared the completion of the experience. Then we can understand that the experience of the subject lasted during a period earlier than the present. The speaker can state an experience that was complete earlier than the present. The form of the intransitive verb had, specified by the past participle greeted, that has the trait as an adverb, reveals that this clause is stated in the past perfect tense. There is a conference. The negative clauses to convey the different intention of the speaker according to the word described by the adverb not. There are three clauses. The first clause is about a clause stated in the perfect tense, as the only verb in this clause is the intransitive verb have. So the speaker who directly describes the intransitive verb with the adverb not reveals that the experience of the subject does not exist. This can be understood from the fact that the intransitive verb have is applied to reveal that the subject retains an experience until the present. We can think of the difference between the definition of the transitive verb get and the intransitive verb have applied in the clause stated in the perfect tense. The transitive verb get describes the condition of the subject who starts to possess an object at the present when the speaker states the clause. The definition of the intransitive verb have is applied to describe the lasting condition of the subject in a clause stated in the perfect tense that started before the speaker describes the condition of the subject. This clause is stated in the present perfect tense, and the definition of the intransitive verb have reveals that the speaker, as the subject, retains the experience until the present before the speaker states the possession of the experience. At the present, the speaker states a clause about the lasting condition. So we can understand that the definition of the intransitive verb have can be extended to the definition of the intransitive verb be, because the intransitive verb have describes the existence of the speaker as the subject who has the experience, who retains the experience until the present. The opposite definition of the be verb is the non-existence of the subject. So the direct description of the adverb not for the intransitive verb have reveals that the experience of the speaker as the subject does not exist. The second clause is about the indirect description of the adverb not for the definition of the transitive verb bite via the modal verb do to emphasize the definition of the transitive verb bite. The adverb not does not describe the definition of the transitive verb bite directly, because we can think of the various condition or experience, condition, or action except the action described by the transitive verb bite. Sorry. So the speaker emphasizes the definition of the transitive verb bite with the definition of the modal verb do at first, so that the interpretation of the negative statement can be reached to the antonym of the transitive verb bite from the existence of the speaker as the subject to the opposite action of the definition of the transitive verb bite. If someone asks us about what we are doing right now, we can answer to the person like, I'm doing nothing. I just exist. the most basic interpretation of not actualizing an action according to the definition of the transitive verb bite can be the existence of the speaker as the subject primarily. From the emphasis of the definition of the modal verb do, the condition of the speaker as the subject can be reached to the condition that can be the opposite action of the transitive verb bite. From this indirect way to describe the definition of the transitive verb by the adverb not via the modal verb do, we can understand that the condition of the subject can be interpreted from the existence of the subject primarily to the experience, condition, or action that is according to the antonym of the verb. For example, we can think of the opposite action of the definition from the transitive verb open to the action according to the definition of the transitive verb close. The third clause is about the indirect description of the adverb not for the transitive verb have via the modal verb do. In the first clause, the intransitive verb have is described by the adverb not directly because the definition of the intransitive verb have can be extended to the definition of be verb to describe the existence of the subject because the experience is retained by the subject which lasts until a point in time as a duration. We can understand the existence of the subject in a duration. In the third clause, the verb have is applied as a transitive verb to deliver the condition of the speaker as a subject to a purposed action to be actualized in the future because the definition of the preposition to reveals the orientation of the subject, who is the speaker in this clause. The purpose of the speaker as a subject can be interpreted into the actual practice to take a step to the point in time and a place that are the premise for the future actualization according to the definition of the root infinitive bite. So the fact that the transitive verb have is described by the phrase of the modal verb, the phrase of the adverbs, the modal verb do, and the adverb not, can be understood as a release from a duty. Because the clause that the transitive verb have and the to infinitive, the phrase of the to infinitive to bite you as the object of the transitive verb have reveals that the speaker as the subject has a duty to take a step to the oriented time and place for the action described by the root infinitive bite to be actualized in the future. But from the description, by the phrase of the modal verb do not tells us that the speaker as the subject is in a condition from just the existence of the speaker to the opposite condition, that the speaker as the subject does not have the duty to put in the actual effort for the purpose to actualize the action according to the definition of the root infinitive bite in the future. The adverb not describes the intransitive verb have directly. In the third clause, I do not have to bite you. The adverb not describes the modal verb do, which is one of the adverbs. The first clause is this: I have not beaten you. The adverb not directly describes the intransitive verb have applied in a clause to deny the definition of the intransitive verb have applied in a clause to convey the intention of the speaker that the subject retains the experience until the present. Retaining an experience can be understood from the premise that the speaker as the subject exists as a duration in a period. The adverb not makes the phrase of the intransitive verb have not only convey the only intention that the subject does not have the experience. Because the opposite meaning of the existence of the subject is the non-existence of the subject. The second clause, that the modal verb do is described by the adverb not, is this: I do not bite you. The adverb not describes the modal verb do to emphasize the definition of the transitive verb bite. The phrase of the modal verb do not describes the condition of the speaker as the subject, just being in a condition without an action indicated by the transitive verb bite. for the primary interpretation of this clause, we can understand that the subject just exists, doing nothing. If the adverb not denies the definition of the transitive verb bite directly, the phrase of the transitive verb not bite describes the ambiguous intention of the speaker that the subject is in any condition except doing the action indicated by the transitive verb bite. From the emphasis, the prior emphasis by the modal verb do, the interpretation of this clause can be reached to a condition that is the opposite of the action described by the transitive verb bite. The tendency of the description by the adverb not to describe the modal verb do is differentiated according to whether the definition of the verb denied by the adverb not conveys the clarified intention of the speaker or not. The adverb not conveys the clarified intention of the speaker with a direct description about the intransitive verb have, because the opposite of the fact that the experience of the subject exists is that the experience of the subject does not exist. These paragraphs focus on the transitivity of the verb in each clause. The first clause is constituted with the intransitive verb have, and the second clause is constituted with the transitive verb bite. The third clause is this: I do not have to bite you. The clause with the description by the phrase of the modal verb do not to deny the definition of the transitive verb have conveys the intention of the speaker who does not own an object. The object is stated as a purposed action indicated by the phrase of the to infinitive to bite you that has the trait as a noun. The object of the phrase of the transitive verb do not have is the phrase of the to infinitive to bite you to indicate an action as the purpose of the speaker who is the subject of the preposition to. The clause without the phrase of the modal verb do not is interpreted into the duty of the speaker as the subject who has the purpose. Having a purpose is interpreted to prompt the subject to actualize the actual practice to reach to the time and place that are planned by Jesus Christ when we deliver this statement. As soon as we deliver this statement, Jesus Christ set our orientation of our life to the point in time and a place for the actualization described by the root infinitive bite in a clause stated in the positive statement. The transitive verb have and the to infinitive as the object are interpreted to convey the obligation of the subject, who is the speaker, because the speaker has the strong intention to let the subject actualize the experience, condition, or action indicated by the root infinitive, which is the object of the preposition to. In a clause that the transitive verb have and the phrase of the infinitive as the object of the transitive verb have, we can understand that the purpose of the subject is interpreted strongly to prompt the subject to practice the preparation to reach to the point in the future at a place for the actualization of the action described by the root infinitive, bite. This clause is interpreted as a clause to describe the condition of the subject that does not have the obligation because the speaker as the subject does not have the purpose of the action indicated by the phrase of the infinitive to bite you.